Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. One of the biggest opportunities within the plant medicine space is the opportunity to reprogram our subconscious minds. However, like you've all heard me say before, the more we learn regarding techniques along the way that can assist in these medicines working more effectively and efficiently, the more success we will ultimately have within this realm. Today's guest on the show is a woman who I have learned so much from regarding the ability for us to reprogram our subconscious minds. And when you hear her story, my hope is that you get the same shivers of possibility and hope in your lives that I did when I experienced her modality firsthand. She has taught over 1,000 people to access their subconscious minds through a combination of muscle testing, meridian therapy, and tapping acupuncture points throughout her career. And in today's episode, you all have the opportunity to hear her story and open up this ability in your own lives by attending her weekly, completely free to join forgiveness ceremonies, along with her free one-day trainings, which you can find more info on in the show notes for this episode. Make sure to tap fully in for this one, as I welcome my dear friend Dr. Teshna Beaulieu to the show. Dr. Teshna, I am so excited to be with you today. And like I said in the intro, for everyone listening, Teshna and I did a podcast. God, it had to have been about a year and a half ago on the Highly Optimized podcast, and it just vanished into thin air. You hit me up the other day asking like, hey, could you send me the link to that podcast? I was like, yeah, I got you. And then I went to go find it, and I was like, I have no idea what that is. So this is going to be a great opportunity to really go through everything that makes up Dr. Teshna in this episode. And just like I said in the intro, you know, with you, it's not like you've been someone who's had to connect with psychedelic medicines to open up to the psychedelic reality that exists among us. And I'm curious for you, like, how did you first get interested in working in what I would say are like the causal realms, like working with these things that are really qualitative? They're hard to quantify because for a lot of us in society, we get institutionalized into this very left brain way of thinking. We only believe in what we can see and measure with our eyes, things like that. So how did you first get into like the mystery, right, behind like the things that are hard to see, but synchronicities and these kind of things that really make up a psychedelic reality?
That's interesting. I guess I would have to say when I was 8 years old, my mother actually took a course in parapsychology. And when she did that, as part of her tuition, she was allowed to bring her family members along with her. And so I was 8 years old, and she brought us to this class, the parapsychology, that was actually like several weeks, like maybe like at one afternoon a week kind of thing for several weeks. And so at 8 years old, I learned how to see aura, how to look at the etheric field, how to go into alpha state so that I could study and just recall things really easily, how to meditate, all that kind of thing. And my mother was really into, at the time, she was reading books like from Rantha, which is about reincarnation and the power of the subconscious. Like after dinner, like we would go and sit in the living room, and she would read us a chapter of the power of the subconscious. And I was 8, so that's how I grew up, because my mom was really open-minded in those ways. And then when I was 17, she had been taking a yoga class, and she says, I think you'd really like that. You should try it. So then I started doing yoga when I was 17. I became vegetarian when I was 17. There's a lot going on. And basically, I decided that my life was going to be about health, and health on all levels: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual health. And so I thought I would go into physical education. So I went, because I didn't know anything about chiropractic or healing or that kind of thing. I just thought my approach to health was to teach people how to work out and how to do aerobics, how to do sports so that they would be active physically and then be healthy. And what happened is at the time, there was really no jobs anymore when I graduated because everybody in Quebec was having less and less kids. And so the schools were closing, and the first teachers to go was the phys ed teachers. So I couldn't find a job, right? But then the other thing that happened while I was there is I was doing an advanced yoga class and also like different types of sports. And I ended up doing a headstand in my yoga class, and I fell out of it on my upper back there and on a really hard floor. And I thought, oh my God, I must have broken my spine, right? But then the pain went away and I thought I was okay. But then a few months later, I started having these sharp pain on my shoulder, like a knife coming in here and on my side. And every time I took a breath, it was like excruciating. And so I didn't know what to do. So I went to the doctors, right? And then they took my blood and my blood pressure and my urine. And they basically told me, you're perfectly healthy. There's nothing wrong with you. And I'm thinking, well, maybe there's nothing wrong. And they basically said it was all in my head. And I said, well, maybe it's all in my head, but it hurts right here and right here every time I take a breath in. And it didn't used to do that. So it's got to be something else, right? So then I thought, well, in desperation, I said, I'm going to go to my yoga class, and see if I stretch it, it's going to help. But in the class, I was in so much pain every breath that it didn't matter which position I was in, that I could barely do anything. And a friend of mine in the class noticed that, and she said, what's going on? Because usually I was like, doing my thing. Right. And I told her, and she said, well, why don't you go see a chiropractor? Like it was the most obvious thing in the world. This is back in 1981, right? So that's a long time ago. That's 43 years ago now, right? I'm dating myself, right? And so I was in college, right? And I get injured. And then, so my friend tells me that. So I said, well, do you know one, And she says, yeah, I have a really great chiropractor. So she gave me his name and number. And the funny thing is his name was Alain Corps, C-O-R-P-S, which, because I'm from Quebec, right? That's French. So that means Alan Body. Like his last name was Body, B-O-D-Y, but Corps in French. So it was so funny. Like my first chiropractor's name, is Alain Corps. But anyway, so I called him up and, told him I really needed an appointment to see him as soon as possible. He says, I'm really sorry. I'm totally booked for a month. I can't see you for a month. And I just start to cry on the phone. I'm like, I'm in so much pain. He says, okay, don't cry. I'll see you on my lunch break today. Can you come at noon? I said, yes, anytime. So I went there at noon. And to this day, I do the same thing. If somebody calls me in pain, I'll fit them in that day, because I know how it changed my life, right? So, and I've done that my whole career. If somebody needs to be seen today, I don't mind. I'll stay later. I'll come early. I'll see them on my lunch break. I will see them that day. And so people are really grateful for that. And so I ended up going to him that day. And sure enough, he palpated my spine. And this was months later after I had fallen from that headstand. And he says, it looks like you had some injury, like right there. Did you ever do anything? And I said, no, I forgot all about it, right? Because he showed me on the x-ray, there was even a little curvature there, like the vertebra literally got displaced. And so he worked on me, and right away I start to feel better, not 100%, but much better. And within 2 weeks, I was completely pain-free. Wow. And I was like, wow, this is a different reality right here, because it didn't matter how well I ate, because I had been vegetarian and, really conscious of that. Didn't matter how much I exercised. It didn't matter how much I meditated or stretched and doing yoga. If I had interference in my spine, I couldn't be 100% healthy. So I said, I have to become a chiropractor. Because this is even more powerful than what I was doing. Yeah. Right. So, and nobody knew anything about chiropractic. This was 1981. Right. And especially in Quebec, chiropractors weren't well known at all. And we weren't even well known enough to be called quacks. You know what I'm saying? Because later on, of course, the medical profession tried to make us look as we were quacks. Right. But back then, it wasn't even known enough to pay attention to us, right? To anybody that was a chiropractor. So anyway, so I ended up going to chiropractic college in Davenport, Iowa. And that was a big deal because I'm French speaking, right? And I had to go to English school, basically. Like I had to go to Davenport, Iowa, and take this whole training. And chiropractic college is not for the lame. I mean, it's like intense. You got the anatomy and the physiology, the embryology, you got it all, the ology. You have them all. Radiology, pathology. And I had to do all this in English, right? And so it was a big deal. But I mean, within a month, I was totally fluent in English just because I had studied English, so I was able to understand it and read it and write it, but I couldn't really speak it that well. But after a month of being completely immersed and having to, I was totally fluent. And I ended up even helping other people that were in my class. Like I was like a mentor to them. Like I was teaching them about biochemistry and physiology. So here I am, a French girl, being a mentor to the other people who were American. It was very funny. So anyway, I'll stop talking so you have a minute to ask me something else if you want.
No, Teshna, that was amazing, because along the way, right? Like, it's like what I hear in there is that you were responding to what life presented you with, right? Like, when you were 8 and your mom took that course and she was able to bring you, right? Like, of course, at 8, like you kind of just do what your parents tell you, right? But in a way, like you were brought into that. Okay, I'll respond to that. And then when you were 17 and your mom mentioned yoga, you were like, okay, cool, I'll respond to that. And then when you had the injury, you're like, okay, cool, I'll respond to that, right? And so like it's this great way of articulating this ability to respond to what life gives you and see it as happening for you, right? Because really what the story articulates is that at any point, especially when you got your injury, you could have easily come into the belief that like, why is this happening to me, and been stuck there, right? I'm sure there's a little bit of that goes on, right? There is with most people, definitely me when I have an injury. But that ability to bounce back and go, okay, what can I learn here? And what is the purpose of this? And look what beauty it led you into, right? Like finding chiropractic care, being able to get a degree in chiropractic care and help other people with that. And then, of course, everything that goes on from there. But what I always look to articulate on this show and just in my work and everything is that what psychedelics do is that for those of us that fall off of our path, or those of us that are maybe going through something that we can't figure out, we can connect with these types of medicines. But they're not the only things that can bring about these types of realities. We're going to get into actually what you're doing now, right? Or what you've been doing is a hybrid of a lot of different things. And, that is totally psychedelic, right? And at the end of the day, like, I really feel as though what psychedelics do is they can increase awareness if someone has fallen out of tune with the rhythm of nature. But for you, like what I'm hearing is that you were really in that rhythm of nature, right? Like you were responding to life, you were going towards the fun in life, you were going towards what your heart wanted, and you were able to reap the rewards of that as a side effect, And so that's really cool. I just love that you articulated all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So then what happened is when I went to chiropractic college, I started studying applied kinesiology. Now, applied kinesiology is the science of muscle testing, but it's not just muscle testing like most people think of it, like asking a question or that type of thing. It's literally muscle testing all the main muscles of the body and finding out if they're connecting or not. And then if they're not, we reconnect them using either the spine or acupuncture points or neurovascular reflexes, neuromuscular reflexes, whatever. And so I started learning that, and that really blew my mind. And back then, this is now 1983 is when I started chiropractic college. So that's like 41 years ago, right? And back then, nobody knew a thing about muscle testing. That was really voodoo. You know what I mean? Like people just didn't understand what muscle testing was, even though this particular kind of muscle testing is really functional neurology. It's not just like we weren't asking questions yet, So then what happened is I was at an international conference of applied kinesiology, and Dr. Roger Callahan, who is the father of tapping, was also an applied kinesiology doctor, but in his field, in psychotherapy. So he's the first one who figured out that tapping on acupuncture points would help release emotional stress. And so he presented that for the very first time in 1984 at that conference, and I happened to be there. So I started tapping in 1984.
Oh my God.
And that was the entrance into the emotional realm and what I could do to help myself emotionally with this. But that was super primitive. It was just about releasing, stress, that type of thing. And so then in 1987, we're at an international conference of total body modification, which is an advanced form of applied kinesiology. And at that conference, Dr. Scott Walker, who's the father of neuro-emotional technique, presented for the very first time his idea of how emotions could get stored in the body, like in an injury, and how to get them out of there, how to take care of the emotional component of physical issues. And I happened to be there the very first time he ever presented that idea. It's almost like I was fated, right? Yeah. Like starting with the muscle testing when nobody knew about it. I've always been a trailblazer. I can't help myself. Yeah. It's like somehow I'm directed to the places I'm supposed to be going to, and I pay attention and I go for it, right? And so I guess I have a lot of intuition. And so anyway, I just knew this was something that I was going to want to do. And so I started applying his principles, and then he started teaching, because he didn't teach right away like seminars. He was just like a regular chiropractor presenting his discovery, but he wasn't like on the road teaching yet. But then when he started, I took all his trainings several times, and I became certified in neuroemotional technique, which is a really fantastic technique. But then what happened is I'm always improving on everything that I learned. So I already had the muscle testing. I already had, the tapping idea. I already had the neuroemotional stuff. And I wanted to help my patients to be able to work on themselves if they really needed it. So I put a technique together that was simplified version of these things, and added a lot of things to them that were even more useful. For example, in the neuroemotional world, we only test okay statement. Like, I'm okay with this, I'm okay with that. And then we find which meridian is affected, and then we fix that. And then the person feels better and they're okay with that. But I was with my first husband for 20 years. When we had been together for 18 years, we had a son. And when he was 2 years old, my husband fell in love with someone else and left us. And I was like, what? Like, if you've been together with somebody for 18 years, you think it's pretty safe to have a child at that point, right? Yeah. But he there he is. He's living when my son is 2, right? And I'm like, what is going on? And then it dawned on me that my mom and dad split up when I was 2 years old. So I was like, what is that? Did I have a belief that somehow once I'm a parent and I have a 2-year-old, I'm supposed to split up from my husband? And sure enough, so that's when I discovered the idea of beliefs, that I could actually test that with the muscle testing. And I figured out the right wording so that I could test myself with that. And sure enough, I believed that. So then I realized I had been subconsciously programmed for this to happen. I call them time bombs. And since that happened to me, I've been able to help a lot of other people avoid that pitfall. Because when somebody comes in and they have children, I ask them, did your mom and dad split up at some point? And if they did, I say, we need to clear this thing. Yeah. So before your kid ends up being 6 years old or 8 years old, and then you that time bomb goes off, and then you do something stupid so that you break up because you're programmed that that's what you're supposed to do as a parent. So do you see? So I can see how like it's psychedelic, right? Like in a way, it's like you can alter your reality by changing your belief system. And so that's basically what I did. Once I figured out that I had that belief, I was like, oh no, what other beliefs do I have that weren't serving me in my marriage? So then what I did is I wrote a book that's called Fit for Love, eventually, because of all of this. But in that book, there's like an exercise that I described that I actually did at that moment. I took a piece of paper and I wrote all positive, negative about my relationship with my husband, right? And I'm like, okay, what are all the things I loved about my marriage? What were the things that were bugging me? And then I made the whole list, like good and bad and ugly, whatever. And then I tested myself on every single one of these things as a belief. And guess what? Every single thing I wrote was part of my belief system. The good, the bad, and the ugly. It was all part of my belief system, including being abandoned, because I had a vanishing twin. And that's a whole other subject that we may want to touch, maybe another podcast, because there's a lot to say about that. But the point is, I discovered that I had 2 vanishing twins. And so when you have a vanishing twins, and you feel that you're abandoned, obviously, right? You believe then that love and life means being abandoned. So then you keep recreating these abandonment. And that's all I'm going to say for that. But we have to do a podcast on that at some point. But anyway, the point is, I discovered that, and then I started to release all the negative beliefs that I had. Like one of them was love and life means being criticized. Another one was love and life mean being number 2. And these things were coming from my childhood because my mother was very critical. Mm. And then I felt like I was number 2 because originally I was the firstborn, but when my sister was born, she was premature. So she needed more care. But I don't understand that. I'm a year and a half old, right? And all of a sudden my mother's attention goes from 100% on me to probably 70% on her just because she's premature and she needs more care. So, and it never changed. So I always felt like I was number 2 after that. So of course I find somebody that's going to make me feel like I'm number 2. Like work is more important. Patients are more important. Other people are more important, whatever. Even though I knew he loved me and I loved him, I had that feeling, right, that I was number 2. So, of course, I cleared that. I cleared the criticism thing. I cleared the number 2. And the whole list of things that I had there that I didn't like. And then I decided I was going to write a list of the qualities I was looking for in my next mate. And so, but before I get to that, and I'll get back to that in a second, is from the moment that my first husband left me to writing that list was about 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, I went from being completely devastated, like sad, abandoned, shame, low self-esteem, depressed, fear, you name it, every single emotion in the book, right? I went from that to being ecstatic at being free and getting another stab at it. And because I was seeing 2 different NET practitioners, plus I was working on myself, and I was doing like at least 2 hours of NET/MTT every single day until I cleared all this stuff. And that's how quickly I was able to get from one to the other. And then I wrote my list and I tested myself on everything on the list to make sure I was congruent with meeting someone like that. And 6 weeks later, I manifested him.
Oh my God.
So, it's kind of like, that's what happened. So I'm going to give you a breather here.
Oh my goodness, Teshna, you are an amazing storyteller. Like, this is like such a perfect rendition, right? Because we don't necessarily need a psychedelic to be able to do what psychedelics do, right? Which is exactly what you're talking about. What do they allow you to do? Get into the subconscious. And if you know what to do with that state, you can reprogram, you can do these types of things. Now, that being said, though, it can be challenging, right, with psychedelics because there's so much going on. It can be hard to focus, right? And so I always tell people, like, yes, connect with the psychedelics if they resonate. And also learn modalities alongside it, work with practitioners alongside them that allow you to really like experience these things. Because for me, before I met you, I did a lot of emotion code and body code. And I did some tuning fork modalities, just things like that. Brain integration therapy. I forget if you've ever heard about brain integration, but it's another kinesiology type based modality. But they helped me immensely. I had a lot of, what Paul Chek would call stinking thinking going on. And a lot of like how I tell everyone, and for people listening to this show, you guys know this, like our belief systems create our sense of reality. We will never have an experience of life that is beyond what we believe is possible for us. If it happens, right? Like, let's say like, you're someone who doesn't believe you're worthy and you win the lottery. What will happen? Your subconscious will actually completely catalyze a catastrophic event to bring you back down to where you choose to believe you're worthy at. That's why a lot of people that win the lottery, they spend all the money, they get into drugs and all these things because they don't feel worthy of that amount of energy. And so what I love about this is that, not only are we speaking to the theory behind this, but you're sharing real stories. And I know that one of our really good friends, Jason McCart, has done a lot of work with you. I've done work with you. I've experienced this. Like, it is epic stuff. It's just like one of the coolest things I've ever experienced because it allows you to break so many, or at least for me, it allowed me to break so many beliefs around what I thought healing was. healing, especially in today's world, is something that a lot of people get stuck in. They're always healing. They're not healed yet, right? And by telling yourself that you're always healing, what are you also telling yourself? That you're not healed, that you're not perfect, right? Any of these kind of things. And so it can be challenging to want to better yourself, but not get focused on getting away from pain versus running towards pleasure. And what I love about you is that you were able to flip that switch and go from like that devastation to like, hey, wait a minute, actually, this is a great opportunity. My husband actually showed me where I was, in challenge within myself, and what a great gift for him to be able to bestow on me. Not because necessarily that, if someone leaves you, that's objectively what's going on, but like anything in life, nothing is objective, right? Like things happen, they're neutral in nature, and we get to choose our perspective on that event, what story we tell ourselves about it. And so what you did was you noticed that you were telling yourself a story that was not leading to any empowering results, and you started to take ownership over that and actually create the story that would lead you to empowering results. So this is like so cool. Continue. I'm just amazed. Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
Right. And so basically, I've been with my second husband now for 20 years already. Right?
You passed the 18 mark.
Yeah. And yes, exactly. And not only that, but he's never criticized me. And I'm definitely number one. And all the different things that I cleared are completely non-existent in this relationship. You know what I mean? And if something new comes up, we have a tool, we work on it right away, clear it right out of there, And so I've been able to teach this now for several decades first to my patients, because I wanted to help them so they have a tool that they could work on themselves or help their kids or whatever at a moment's notice. And so I was teaching that locally. And then when COVID hit, everybody went online, right? And I'm like, I got to figure out a way of teaching this online. And I did. And so it was like a perfect opportunity. And now I have students from all over the world that are learning MTT. That's what I call it, meridian therapy and tapping, because I'm teaching both a way of clearing things using a different type of tapping sequence that's faster and it works really well. And actually, I've had a number of EFT practitioners who have taken my training, and they're just blown away at how much more they can do when they add the knowledge that I'm sharing. And then the other aspect that I teach is meridian therapy, where we use pulse points. And that comes from more like the NET side of things, except that I'm doing it completely different than what they're doing. Just using the pulse points, which have been existing for thousands of years. This comes from acupuncture. And using neurovascular points that are on the forehead that comes from applied kinesiology. And so basically, I combine these two things depending on what's going on. And I teach people both ways so that they can use one or the other depending on the situation. And so now I've been having a blast teaching this online, and as a matter of fact, I do every Sundays at 11, I do a forgiveness call. So what that is I lead people through a forgiveness process using meridian therapy. And it's so effective that, let's say I have 25 people on the call, every single person gets to that place of forgiveness by the end, and within it takes maybe 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what's going on with people. But I can lead the whole group to clear this using meridian therapy. I teach them where the points are and how to hold it and everything. And it's free. So anybody can join. And my goal is to have at least 500 people on that call every Sunday. So it's my part to help the humanity, like just lower that, that charge of holding grudges and being angry and not being able to let go. Because really, when you forgive, it's for you. It's not for the other person. When you hold a grudge and you can't forgive someone, it affects you. It affects your health. And it's locked into the body. That's why it's so hard for people to forgive. Like, even if consciously, like, they want to forgive, they still feel it in their bodies, because the hurt and all the emotions that went along with it are still locked into the meridian system, in the nervous system, in the cellular memory. And with this method, we literally can dissipate that energy that's stuck in those meridians so that you feel the difference. So every time we clear a point, the stress goes down. So let's say people start at a 10, we clear a point, now they're down to an 8. We clear another point, now they're down to a 6. We clear the next point, down to a 4, and so forth until it's 0. And they literally feel it. I'm not making them say that. I say, okay, put in the chat where you'd rate your stress now. And everybody's going down. It's really cool. So I'm so excited because now I can do it. See, for all these years, I've worked one-on-one, right? And now I felt like in this time, I'm officially retired, right? I don't have to work. But this is my mission now. I want to work 1 on 500, 1 on 1,000 eventually, 1 on 1,000,000, like I may be online on YouTube or something. I don't know. That's my vision, where I can help so many more people instead of just one-on-one. It's going to go a lot quicker if I can do it like that. And then I also teach it online. So I have like a free 1-day MTT immersion that I also offer, where I teach people how to muscle test themselves and how to use that to tap into their subconscious to figure out what is there. Like, what are they okay with and not okay with, for example, to start with, like just the simple things, like what are some of the blocks they may have. And that's a big aha moment when your own body is giving you the feedback. And we're using functional neurology muscle testing, not oracle muscle testing. We're not asking a question. We're saying a statement. Like, for example, I'm okay with money. And then you test yourself and see if you're strong or weak. If you're weak on that, that means on the subconscious level, you're not okay with money. So guess what? You're very unlikely to have a lot of it, right? Because as you explained, the subconscious always wins. So unless you change the program in the subconscious, you're doomed as far as that particular thing, right? It's not going to happen. Just like you said, it's like a thermostat. You can only go so far. And then if you try to go a little further, it's going to bring you right back down to where you're comfortable, because that's what the program is in the subconscious. I'll let you talk.
No, it's so perfect, Teshna, because I mean, in my experience, having worked with you, having done other modalities that are similar, like for me, EFT was always too tiresome. Like, there's just so much tapping, and I'm like, is anything even happening? Like, it's just too much. And the other thing too is that with EFT, like, personally, when I look at a modality, I want it to blow me away, right? Like, I want it to like really shock me. EFT for me personally just seemed like I had, Rachel, my partner, would do it all the time. But it just didn't really seem like it was like that big of a payoff. She might say like, I feel more relaxed, I feel calm. But I'm like, I want to feel highly optimized after I do a modality. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not looking for like a point difference. Like, I'm looking for like 100-point difference. And when I had my appointment with you, I walked away from that being like, whoa, okay, I am a different man in a different river now, And like, that's what I enjoy, because for me, I don't believe that, this has to be a hard thing. I don't believe that healing or expanding whatever side of it you want to focus on, where you're going or where you're going into, I don't believe that has to be hard. I believe that creator, God, whatever you want to call that source of power within us, I believe that it would not create a calculus equation of how to heal, right? Like, that's what the human being mind does, right? Is make things into a calculus equation. Oh, I must have to go take all these pills or do this long year-long thing. And it's like, no, really, at the end of the day, if you can change your beliefs, healing will be spontaneous, because the only reason you aren't healed, right, or expanded into the version of yourself that you could be, is because you're getting limited by beliefs, right? It's kind of like on a car engine. If you have a governor on the engine, no matter how much you press that gas pedal, it'll only go to a certain mile per hour. But if you take that governor off, all of a sudden, you didn't really change the engine at all. You just took a limiter off, and now it's able to go so much farther. And that's exactly what I found with this stuff. And that's why I love it so much, because as someone who spent so many thousands of dollars getting massages and even acupuncture and chiropractic care, and don't get me wrong, those things work amazing. And at the end of the day, though, they can only work to the level that your belief systems will allow for. And so fortunately, when I grew up, I had a really good outlook on acupuncture and massage, because my mom, like, the only thing that had worked for her when she had injured her back or something like that was acupuncture. And so I grew up really aware of that. But also, she got really messed up from a chiropractor. So for a lot of years, I was terrified to go to a chiropractor. And then the first time I went to one, guess what happened? I ended up way worse than I was. It was this guy that, nice enough guy, but did the old really hardcore, like, crack your body type stuff. And I think he didn't realize how flexible I was. And I think he put too much pressure into it. He was like a, offensive linebacker type person. And so it took me a couple of years that's when things really got messed up for me. That's when I started getting a lot of headaches and things like that. And it wasn't until I actually started working with emotion code and body code and brain integration therapy that I started to all of a sudden just be open to the idea of going to a chiropractor again. But this time I sought out a totally different type of chiropractic care. I sought out a guy, his name's Mark Klezmer. He's the man. I love him, here in Boston. He does the activator. So it's this little tiny, like, rivet gun kind of thing. He doesn't crack you. I mean, he'll use that every once in a great while. He's never had to use it on me, but he will mention there's like very specific instances where I might have to crack someone, but he'll use the activator. And he also does muscle testing. And so when I started going to him, he really got me into okay, we're going to start muscle testing. We're going to start looking at food sensitivities, all this other stuff. And that's what I've loved about him is he's probably in his 70s. He's still going to seminars every other weekend, flying all over the place, learning stuff, just like you, right? Like someone who's just forever learning, right? Paul Chek, very similar way, right? They just never stop learning. And that's when you can tell someone's really excited about it. When you already have a successful business, when you've already been doing something for a while, you don't necessarily need to go, uproot your life and do all these things. But when you're doing it, right? Like for you, you're like, I'm retired, but this is my mission now. It's like, those are the kind of people that I always say, listen to those people, because they have a deep enough why. And that's what really matters, because if they believe in it, they will be able to help you believe it as well. And at the end of the day, anything is able to work necessarily if you believe it, at least in my, understanding. And so, yeah, it's really cool that, you've been able to not only create this modality, but now bring it into the wavelength of being able to be like 1 to 500, 1 to 1,000, et cetera. And I'll definitely make sure that before the end of the show, I let people know where they can find those links as well. We'll put them in the show notes for the free calls, because I'm going to be on those calls. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. So like I said, I have the 1 hour forgiveness call. I have the 1 day MTT that's like 9 to 3 right now, where I teach a number of things, and it's free, So I just want to at least have this out there. And then I also offer a 3-day training, intensive training, where I teach everything. And that one, there's a charge for that. And then I also have a membership that I started maybe 6 months ago, where, because my students were saying, how can we get more? We want more. And so I said, okay, we'll create a membership. So with that, they can take all my trainings that I do in the whole year. So I do 4 of the 3-day trainings, and I do 6 to 8 of the 1-day trainings. And then we added a weekly call just for the members. And every week I either coach them into how to do it. So I have them do it and to each other, like in the coaching, or I do a session with them. So I lead them through clearing limiting beliefs, stress, phobias, fears, PTSD, addiction, you name it, all this stuff. And so that those are the things I teach in the 3-day, like I teach everything. And so it's really fun. So that's what we've been doing. And then the other thing I want to say is that we can clear our limiting beliefs in less than a minute. Right? It's not about repeating this thing for forever, like trying to convince yourself with an affirmation, that your subconscious, every time you say something, your subconscious is going, yeah, right. And then it just negates it, right? Yeah. Instead, we use the technique and the muscle testing to find out what the thing is that you want to get rid of. We do the technique, and then we retest, and it's gone. And you feel the difference because it's a body-mind technique. It's not just a mind thing. It's a body-mind technique. So it literally shifts it on all levels, and you feel the difference. And you should see some of the comments from my student. It's just amazing. And also the other thing I was teaching, just training just on February 2nd to 4th is my last 3-day training that I was just doing. And one of my students in there, I was talking about how for parents, when they clear their belief system, it automatically clears their kids up to about 16 years old, because the kids are resonating with the parents, right? So whatever frequency the parents have, the kids pick up on it, and that becomes their subconscious program, right? So after the training, she was telling us how she cleared this one belief on herself, and all her kids, she had tested all her kids for the belief, and they all had it, right? And then the kids said, "Mom, you have it too." And she's like, she tests herself, and sure enough, she has it, right? So she clears herself, and then she retested all the kids, and they were all cleared.
Oh my God.
And it was just like amazing, So it's really cool. Like once it's like a brain hack. It's a brain hack. I figured out a way of going into that subconscious, figuring out what's in there, and then a technique to get it out of there in less than a minute, to just eliminate that block, eliminate that limiting beliefs. And then I also teach people how to input an empowering belief instead, like making sure you have the opposite belief. So for example, when I cleared myself with letting go of the belief that love means being criticized, then once I cleared that and I was strong on that, then I inputted, I can allow myself to believe that love means being accepted as I am. See? So I teach people how to not only, and also the other thing I did is, not only do you have to check, I can let go of the belief that love means being criticized, but also I can let go of the belief that love means being critical. Because a lot of times, as children, when we learn, because my mom was critical, right? Well, so I learned not only that love means being criticized, but also that if I love someone, I'm supposed to be critical, right? So it's kind of like whenever you point the finger at somebody, you got 3 back that are pointing at you, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you have to be open and willing to see that if you feel a certain way that somebody's doing this to you, then you can turn it around and say, "Oh, wait a minute, am I doing it to someone else? Like, or where in my life am I doing that?" And then you can actually muscle test yourself. So with my student, I joke all the time. I say, you don't have to guess, just test, because your subconscious and your body doesn't lie, right? So it's like, once you know how to use the muscle test properly with the right semantic testing, which means like we're saying the right kind of statement so that you can see if your body's congruent or not, sky's the limit. Just go in there and you just start to change things right and left. And then your life starts to change, because whatever your subconscious program is, good or bad, that's what happens.
Oh, 100%. It's funny. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the show before, but it only dawned on me like a year ago that in 2019, right before I started my business and had what I refer to as a Kundalini awakening, I don't really know what it was, but based on how I felt and the description of what like Aaron Abke's taught me, who's a good buddy of mine, who's like the Kundalini expert, I believe that's what happened. And right before that, I had not only been connecting with a lot of psychedelics, but I had also found brain integration therapy. And I started going to a lot of brain integration therapy. I was going like once a week for a while. And I didn't really know, I didn't understand any of this. I just kept going to get acupuncture, and they kept mentioning, "Oh, you got to try brain integration therapy." And I was like, "What is that?" But it just sounded cool. And I was like, "Oh, I'll mess with that," So I went and made an appointment. Definitely felt like I can always feel this like channel open up right in the center of me. It's almost like when you're in a really good vibe, right? Like you can just feel like this like circular flowing energy right through the center line of your body, like all your chakras open. And that's what I would feel there, right? Like they would muscle test me on things. They would have me repeat things. They would do all these weird clicks and clacks with their feet and mouth and things like that. And then all of a sudden they would test me again and I'd be strong there. And the funny thing would be that when they would go muscle testing, right, they'd move my arm around to different things. And I would always know a fraction of a second beforehand, like, I'm not going to be strong there. Oh, this I'm strong in. Like it would be an intuitive thing. So it was very interesting because every single time, and I actually still see a massage therapist that does structural energy therapy. And what I love about her is she does everything based on muscle testing, right? So she'll like get you on the table, she'll muscle test you, and then she'll fix your body according to like what your muscles are basically speaking to. I had done a lot of that brain integration therapy along with obviously connecting with a lot of psychedelics. And all of a sudden I went out to Vegas, right? Like, first of all, what has happened was I went out to see Paul Chek and I went alone, which at that point I was still kind of like nervous to travel alone. I'd kind of been sheltered and just stayed in this area of the country. So I fly out there, I meet a bunch of people, have a very positive reinforcing experience to like keep doing that. And then we go out to Vegas to go to a big cannabis conference because I had wanted to find my own investors and, had this like, all right, let's just do it. So I go out there and I didn't get what I wanted, but I got what I needed, right? Which was a belief system shifting, right? That was like, if I could speak to the limiting belief, it was something along the lines of like, I don't have the ability to be in control of my life, like something like that. And so what was happening was I was very good at getting out of things. Growing up, if my parents asked me to do something and I didn't do it, I would, try to like, lessen the blow and get away from actually saying like sorry and taking ownership over it. But out in Vegas, that shifted. And just that one thing changed my entire life. I mean, like literally I came back, I quit the job, I started the podcast, I, quit my cannabis dependency. My whole life blew up after that. So I'm serious, guys, when I'm saying this, like Teshna is 100% right. Like just changing one belief, right? Because, I love brain integration therapy, but it's definitely nowhere near as fast or as efficient or effective as what you're doing based on my experience with what you've done. Again, even if you're doing EFT or whatever, like you can change these beliefs and things can shift very rapidly. The challenge is, like you were saying, some of these things take a lot of time. They're kind of clunky. Whereas yours, it's smooth sailing. It's easy, and it's really powerful. And I think that the more of us that recognize exactly what you said, which I'm like, it's so funny that like, you're someone who's never connected with psychedelics, but yet you understand exactly like I could have a conversation with you like we were talking about psychedelics, no problem. Because you're saying when you're pointing one finger, there's three pointing back at you. I'm a big fan of hermetics, right? And the law of correspondence states that, right? As within, so without, as above, so below. It's like these universal laws that speak to the fact of like in this, situation, like how anything that triggers you, anything that upsets you, is really just something going on inside of you. Like no one can trigger you. No one can upset you. No one can make you happy, right? Like those are all things that happen within you. And the more that we get to realize that and take accountability for it, I think for a lot of people, it sounds scary or daunting because they immediately think of the challenging side of it, right? Like, so if someone triggers me, that's a me. So if someone cheats on me, I did that, right? Like they think about that side and it's like, okay, yes, accurate. But also the other side is true. Imagine that you see someone that is speaking and you feel this like, oh my God, like this like charge, right? Maybe it triggers you. Well, that's because you see the fact that you could be doing that, but you're currently telling yourself a story that doesn't allow you to. So it's like on both sides, right? Both the shadow side and also what I call the golden shadow, right? Like the biggest aspects of your divinity that have yet to be explored or yet to be accepted and brought into your wholeness and therefore your experience of life. So I'm with you 100%. This is awesome.
And the other thing that I teach is that basically relationships is one of the fastest evolutionary tool if you use it as a mirror and you have a tool like MTT to immediately get rid of whatever it is that you find. So like if you are in a relationship and you get triggered, like you said, by something they said or something they did, and like you said, take ownership of it. Okay, how is that in me also? Or why am I getting upset with this, right? And then you work on that. Because I also teach a stress reduction protocol that's really effective. So like if you're really stressed out about your husband leaving his underwear on the floor every day, then you can do a stress reduction protocol and you won't care about it. And once you don't care about it, he's less likely to do it.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how that works?
It's so funny. It's like once you don't have a charge on something, then it's much less likely to happen. It's very funny how that works. But anyway, using your relationships or anything that happens in your life as a mirror. So whatever like is triggering you, like you said, you have it inside. So like if you're in a seminar and somebody keeps interrupting and it triggers you, well, you might want to look at where are you interrupting others, right? And that's why it's bugging you, is because you know you're doing that too, and you don't like that about yourself. So now you're annoyed about this person who's doing it. You see, so that's just an example, but that is how it works. And so it's just wonderful for me to be able to share this technology with the world to speed up everybody's evolution.
Yes.
Right. And also I've been using this technique now for decades to manifest what I want. That's how I manifested my second husband, right? And then I manifested my ideal home in the US first, and then I manifested another ideal home in the Ecuador where I live now, and so forth. I mean, like if I want to manifest something, I just make sure that I'm congruent with it first. So I muscle test myself to make sure that I'm okay with getting that I'm, I can allow myself to believe that I deserve and whatever to have this. And then once you're congruent with that on a subconscious level, it doesn't take very long. And then you get the manifestation coming your way, and I have so many stories with that. And now my students are doing the same thing. So like this one woman, she took my training maybe a year and a half ago, and she's 70, and she hadn't been in a relationship for at least 10 years. She was super stressed out. Her health wasn't that great. Her money situation wasn't that great, and then she took the training and she started applying what I was teaching. And she wasn't even really thinking she really wanted a relationship. But part of what I'm teaching is like how to manifest wealth, health, love, and perfect expression of self. Like the four main pillars, right? You need to have money, you need to have love, you need to have a meaningful thing to do in your life, and you need your health, right? So you need, and money, right? So you need four of these things. And so she started doing it. And like within, I think, a month, she met the man of her dreams in Vilcabamba. She lives in Vilcabamba. And it's not like it's a big village or anything, but she ended up meeting this guy, and they've been together ever since. Her health has improved. Her outlook on life is amazing. She doesn't feel stressed at all. She's like, so much better, right? This is just one example, but it's really cool.
Oh my goodness. It is so cool because, again, like what you're perfectly illustrating there is the law of resonance, right? Like you attract not what you want, you attract who you are. And so like if you are not liking the results in your external reality, you can do one of two things. You can either say, oh, woe is me. Life's always doing these things to me. I'm the victim of reality, right? And the mainstream will definitely push you to have that. Yeah, you have a reason to be upset. Yeah, you've been victimized. And this is why it's such a thirst trap, because they know what they're doing, because they lead you into thinking that you're a victim and that you are not able to heal yourself and all of these things, the more that you're never going to be able to actually live your life, the more you're going to get sucked into the mainstream, the matrix, the narrative, etc. When you're able to actually understand, like, okay, if I am not liking or enjoying what I am manifesting in my environment, what's going on inside me, right? If I shift that, my external reality will shift to fit my internal demands, because it's not the other way around, right? Like the external world, if you're expecting the external world to fit your internal demands, good luck, right? Like at the end of the day, if you go out there expecting that the world has to be perfect for you to be happy, oh my goodness, that is literally the most disempowered version of life you could possibly exist in. But at the same time, if you're able to go, well, if it rains out, hey, you know what? It's great that we needed some rain, like that ability to look at life, like respond to it. Okay, this is happening. So this must be the thing that's in the highest alignment for me. So what can I learn here? What's the lesson here? When you approach life in that way, you actually become the victor of your story rather than the victim. And that is the only way you can actually go forth and co-create epic magic in the world, to actually access your unique gifts. And so I love the work you're doing, because it is perfectly tied to being able to actually allow us to reach our full potential as human beings, as this divine being living out this illusion of separation, to remind ourselves of the divinity within us. It's the coolest thing ever.
Absolutely. And that's exactly that's how I see it. I see it as an evolutionary tool.
Yeah.
To have like first of all, the willingness to look at yourself. Second of all, you have the tool to test it on yourself, to see if it's there or not. And if it's there, and then you have a choice. Do you want to leave it there, or do you want to change it? And if you want to change it, you use one of the two therapies that I teach, either the meridian therapy or the meridian tapping sequence that I teach. That's much quicker than the EFT. And you change it. And then you retest yourself again, and it's gone. That fast. It literally, it's less than a minute.
Oh my God.
So it's really cool.
That's amazing. Oh, Teshna, I got to make sure that I come to those classes because I am so over the moon about this stuff. And guys, for all of you guys listening, we'll make sure to put them in the show notes for the next one coming up. Is it the same link for like every Sunday call that you use, or is it a different link each week?
Like every Sunday, it's about an hour, where I present what I do and all that. And then we do the experience, and then we have comments and questions at the end. Okay. And then every couple months, I teach the 1-day MTT immersion. The next one is going to be March 16.
Oh, cool.
And then the one after that is May 18. And I'll give you the link, because when you go on that link, it gives you all the dates that I have for the year for the 1 day, and all the dates that I have for the 1 hour call, which is almost every Sunday, except when I teach the 3-day, because then I'm going to be teaching the 3 days. So I won't be available that Sunday, but I make it my priority to have this. It's almost like instead of going to church, you can go to forgiveness call every Sunday at 11 and forgive yet another person. So if you do that every week, you'll have like 50 people you forgave, right? And it's amazing how many people we can come up with that we can't forgive. Sometimes it's not big things, but it's little things that are like eating at you. And what the comment that I hear the most when we do this at the end is people feel so much lighter. And then the other thing that's really cool is that once they really have forgiven that person, like on all levels, like I do with that process, that oftentimes there's a huge shift in that relationship. That person actually connects back with them with a text or an email, or something in the universe shows that there's a difference now. And it's so cool. Like I had one of my student, like he was forgiving his wife because she wasn't trusting him to drive the kids anywhere. And so he forgave her for that. At the very end of the thing, he gets a text from her saying, "Hey, I'm wondering if you would teach our daughter to drive." And then ever since then, he's been driving the kids to school and back.
Oh my
and
God.
teaching the daughter how to drive. You know what I mean? And then that happened like immediately. He had another one where he was really upset with his brother. And I mean, so upset, like he literally said he wanted to vaporize him, right? Like he was so mad, right? And he came to the forgiveness call, and he decided to do it for his brother. And that afternoon, there was a party in the family, and he was like, "I'm not going because I don't want to see this guy, right? I don't want anything to do with him." So anyway, he did the forgiveness call, and at the end, he was so chill. He actually felt compassion for his brother. He ended up going to the party and even hugging his brother. I mean, that's how powerful this forgiveness process is. It's just amazing. It really is. It just blows me away every time. And people are so grateful. I have people coming every Sunday, because every Sunday they feel lighter and lighter and lighter,
Oh my goodness. And what a great gift to give yourself. At the end of the day, like, we aren't here just to suffer, pay taxes, and die, right? Like, we're here for much greater things than that, and we are all each responsible to give ourselves that, right? To love ourselves enough to go seek out the things, the people, the places, etc. They're going to be in alignment with us. And I'm curious for you, Teshna, like, before we wrap up here, like, where can people find you? And of course, we'll put it in the show notes, but where can people find you, reach out if they want a private session or anything like that? Like, where can I send people to be able to tap into this magic?
Right. So I have a website that's basically drteshna.com with DR for doctor. So drteshna.com. And also my email. But actually, if you go on that, there's a place to contact, and you just send a message through that. That's probably the best way. That way I'll see it for sure. And then I will give you the link so that they could register for either the forgiveness call or the 1-day MTT, or if they are interested in taking the 3-day training or become a member of the MTT community, that would be awesome. I'll give you all that information.
Teshna, you are the best. This has been absolutely amazing. I always learn so much from you and get my battery so charged whenever we talk. I am excited as hell to come to these forgiveness calls, and then also the 1-day training. And then I imagine it won't be long before I'm a member as well. So I am super excited. And guys, for all of you out there, I cannot recommend working with Dr. Teshna enough. As you guys heard me articulate, she's helped me through some big things when I did my appointment with her that have lasted. They've never come back. And so for all of you out there, I know that every one of us is tasked with certain challenges in our lives, and that they're great opportunities if we choose to hop into that seat of ownership and take our power back. So make sure to check out the show notes where you can find the forgiveness call links on Sundays. Make sure you check the show notes also for where you can find the 1 day workshops and the 3 day workshops, Dr. Teshna's website, and everything going on. So wherever you guys are in the world, I hope you're having the best day ever. If you loved the show, make sure to give us a 5-star rating. It would mean so much to us. And until next time, everybody, may the force be with you to infinity and beyond. Peace.